Day 5, Part 5, Chapter 2. Welcome to yet another amazing part of Ashtavakra Gita, where King Janaka asking a 13-year-old enlightened boy, Ashtavakra, secrets of liberation, and from never-ending stress and misery. What is our misery and how can we be free from this non-ending chatter in our mind? Where all this comes from? What is ego and why it's bitten us, killing all we work for? A deep understanding of ego and its working will free us from our ego and thus freeing us from our misery. And we could start experiencing joy which we used to in our childhood, a egoless state we all enjoyed. Let's dive deep into our own being and explore our true nature. You are the one observer of all. And the beauty of this sutra is that no sooner do you become an observer than you know that the observer is only one, not many. Objects are many, spectators are many. It is the nature of the objects and the spectators to be in many. It is a web of lies. The observer is only one. For instance, the moon is out, a full moon. In the rivers, in puddles, in the pools and the ponds, in the ocean, in the stream. Everywhere it is reflected. If you wonder, the earth counting all the reflection, there will be trillions. The moon is one, reflection innumerable. The observer is one, performers are many, spectators are many. They are only reflection, they are shadows. When a person becomes free from being a performer or a spectator, has no desire to exhibit and be seen, and has no desire to see, when he knows that the trap of seeing and showing is false, no longer interested, he attains non-attachment, freedom from desire. Now there is no desire for anyone to say you are beautiful, you are good, or you are virtuous. Even if you inwardly wish people to think you are virtuous, then know that you are still caught in the same old web. If you wish in your heart that people know you are religious, then you are still caught in the same web. The world is still with you. It has assumed another shape, taken a new mode, but the same old trap continues. The same old pattern continues. What will you get by seeing? You have seen so much. What did you get? What will you get by exhibiting? You can give you something real for your display. Putting aside these two, putting aside this duality and plunging into the observer, one finds that there is only one. This full moon is only one. In these pools, puddles, ponds, lakes, it looked numerous. There were separate mirrors. So there seemed to be many moons. I have heard that a king built a whole palace with mirror. He put mirror after mirror inside and it became looking a glass palace. Once a dog, king's own dog, was shut in at night. He was left inside by mistake. You can understand the dog's condition. It is the same as man's condition. He looked all around and saw nothing but the dogs. A dog in every mirror. He barked. He freaked out. When a man is afraid, he wants to make others afraid. He thinks perhaps his fear will be less if others are also frightened. The dog barked, but naturally, as there were only mirrors there, in mirror after mirror, dogs barked back. The sound returned to him. It was his own echo. He barked all night, ran, charged the mirrors, and became covered in his own blood. No one else was there. He was alone. He was found dead in the morning. There were blood stains all over place. His story is a story of a man. There is no one other here. The other does not exist. Whoever is unique. Here one is. But this will not be understood until you have caught hold of the one within you. You are the one observer of all, and in reality you are always free. Ashtavakra say, in reality free. Do not think this is just a fantasy. Man is very strange. He thinks the world is real. And these statements of the truth are just fantasies. He considers unhappiness to be real. And if a ray of happiness descends, he considers it as a dream, a deception. People come to me and they say, we feel great joy, but the doubt arises that perhaps it is an illusion. They have lived in misery for so many lives that they have lost the confidence that there can also be joy. Joy began to seem impossible. They are also used to weeping, so used to unhappiness, so familiar with their thorns of life that they do not trust their eyes when they see flowers. They think this must be a dream, an unreal sky flower. It cannot be. It should not exist. This is why Ashtavakra says, in reality free. One is not bound. Bondage is impossible because only God is. Only one is. There is nothing that binds nor anything to be bound. In reality, always free. This is why a man like Ashtavakra says, if you wish, you can be free this very moment because you are already free. There is nothing preventing freedom. There was never a bondage. You only believed you were bound. Your bondage is this: you see others, not yourself, as the observer. There is only one bondage. You consider the other, not yourself, as the observer. And there is only one liberation to know yourself as the observer. Begin trying this experiment. You are sitting near a tree, you are looking at it. Then gradually, continuing to look at the tree, begin to see the one who is looking at the tree. Just a little adjustment. Ordinarily, the arrow of consciousness move towards the tree. Let this arrow move in both directions. Let it bear fruit in both directions. It should see the tree at the same time. Try to see the one who is seeing. Do not forget the seer. Catch the seer more and more. You will miss again and again. It's an old habit of many lives. You will miss, but try to catch the one who sees again and again. And as the seer comes into your grasp, sometimes only for a moment, in that moment you will feel an emergence of unknown peace. A blessing has rained down. An auspicious ray has descended. If it happens like that for a moment, in that moment you will enjoy the ecstasy of liberation. And this ecstasy will transform the flavor of your life, change the flow of your life. Words are not able to change your life stream. Scripture do not transform. Experience transforms. The taste transforms. You are listening to me here. One can listen in two ways. While listening, if your attention is fixed only on what I am saying and what you forget yourself, then you are not an observer, not a listener, not a witnessing what you hear. Your attention gets stuck on me and you become a spectator. You can become a spectator not only with the eyes but also with the ears. Whenever your attention gets stuck on the object, you become a spectator. While listening, listen to me at the same time. Keep looking at the one, too, who is listening. Catch hold of him, keep in touch with him, that one who is listening. Certainly you are listening, I am speaking, but don't notice only the speaker. Keep track of the listener too. Remember him again and again continuously. Gradually you will find the moments you were in touch with the listener are the only moments you heard me. The rest is useless. When you listen in touch with the one who is listening, then you will hear exactly what I am saying. And when you listen out of touch with the one who is listening, then who knows what you will hear? Something neither Ashtavakra nor I have said. Then your mind will wave all sort of waves. You are unconscious. In unconsciousness, how can you understand the word of consciousness? These are the statements of consciousness. These are the words from another world. When you listen in sleep, you will weave dreams around the words. You will spoil the color of these statements. You will cover them with the cow dung mix. You will stretch their meaning in your own way. You will comment on them, and in your very commentary, these very unique words will become corpse. Your hands will touch only the Ashtavakra's corpse. You will miss the living Ashtavakra. Because to touch the living Ashtavakra, you will have to be in touch with your observer. There is living Ashtavakra. Think about it. You are listening to me. As you go on listening, listen to the one who is listening. The arrow be double towards me and towards you. There is no harm if you forget me, but you should not be forgotten. At the moment comes when neither you nor I remain, a moment of such a deep peace. When two do not remain, only one remains. You are the one speaking, you are the one listening, you are the one seeing, you are the one being seen. This is the moment that Ashtavakra is indicating, the one observer of all, and in reality always free. Bondage is dreamlike. Tonight you will sleep in Sydney, but during your sleep you may be in Melbourne. You may be in Darwin or in Brisbane. You may be anywhere. When you wake up in the morning, you will find yourself again in Sydney. If you went to Melbourne in your dreams, to return, you won't need to travel by air, nor catch a train, nor come back by foot. You won't need to travel at all. In the morning, your eyes will open and you will find yourself in Sydney. In the morning, you will find that you never went anywhere. You went somewhere in your dreams. But is going somewhere in dreams really going? Your bondage is this: you see the other, not yourself. As the observer, there is only one bondage. We are not conscious of ourselves. We are not conscious of the observer. This is one meaning of the sutra. Another meaning is also worth considering. Whoever has written on Ashtavakra has usually given it a different meaning. So it is necessary to understand the other meaning too. The second meaning is also right. Both together are right. Your bondage is this, that you see other, not yourself, as the observer. You are listening to me, you think ears are listening. You are looking at me, you think eyes are looking. How will the eyes see? If you think eyes are the observer, you are mistaken. The one who sees is behind the eyes. The one who hears is behind the ears. If you touch my hand, you will think your hand is touching my hand. It's wrong. The one who touches is hidden within the hand. How will the hand touch? If you die tomorrow, the corpse will be lying there. People will sit holding the hand, but there won't be any touch. The corpse will be lying there, the eyes will be still open. It will look, everything is been seen, but nothing will be seen. The corpse will be lying there, there may be a music, a band playing. Sounds, waves strikes the ears, vibration will reach you, but nothing will be heard. He who used to hear, he who saw, he who touched, he who tasted, that one has gone. The sense organs do not bring experience. Someone hidden behind the sense organ. The other meaning of the sutra is to know yourself as an observer, not as the body, not as the eyes, not as the ears or the sense organs, but only the inner consciousness as the observer. I am the doer, thus has the black serpent of ego bitten you. I am not the doer, drink this immortal nectar of trust and be happy. I am the doer, thus has the black serpent of ego bitten you. Our belief is everything. We have fallen into dreams of belief. We have become whatever we believe about ourselves. This idea is very thought-provoking. This is the very essence of Eastern experience. Whatever we have believed about ourselves, we become. If you ever seen an hypnotist giving a demonstration, you will be amazed. If he hypnotizes a man, then under hypnosis tells him, "You are a woman. Stand up and walk." The man starts walking like a woman. It is very difficult for a man to walk like a woman. For that, a certain body structure is needed. To walk like a woman, a belly with an empty space for the womb is needed. Otherwise, one cannot walk like a woman. One can do it after long practice. But when a hypnotist puts a man to sleep and tells him under hypnosis, "Stand up, you are a woman, not a man, walk," he walks like a woman. Or he may hand him an onion and says, "Here is an apple, go ahead and eat it." He eats the onion, and if you ask him how it tastes, he will say it's very good. He doesn't even suspect that it's an onion. He can't smell it. Hypnotists have experienced this, and by now it is a scientific fact. There has been much experimentation on it. Lift the hand of an unconscious hypnotized person and put an ordinary rock in it. Tell him it's a hot coal and he will throw it away with a jerk, shouting, "I am burnt." It will be okay only went this far, but a blister forms on his hand. You must have heard of people who walk on fire. This too is a deep state of hypnosis. If you believe you won't be burned, the fire doesn't burn you. It is a matter of belief. If there is the slightest doubt, there will be trouble. You will be burned. There have been many incidents where people have felt courageous and simply walked on fire. When so many people are walking, they can do it too. But if the worm of doubt is inside anyone, he is burned. An experiment was done on this at Oxford University. Some Buddhist monks from Sri Lanka were invited to fire walk. Every year on the Buddha full moon, they walked on fire in the remembrance of Buddha. This is absolutely right. To walk on fire in remembrance of Buddha is right because Buddha's whole teaching is that you are not the body. If we are not the body, then how can fire burn us? In the Gita, Krishna said, "Neither fire can burn you, nor weapons can pierce you." So how many monks walk on the fire of Buddha full moon in Sri Lanka? Some of them were invited to Oxford and they walked on the fire there too. While they were fire walking at the Oxford, one monk was burnt. About 20 monks walked, one was burnt. It was looked into to find out how this happened. The monk had come to see England. He had no trust that he could walk on fire. His intention was something else. He had come only as a tourist. He only wanted to see England. And he thought, these 19 people are not getting burned. Why should I get burned? But inside there was a worm of doubt and he was burned. There was another incident that same night. A professor, an Oxford University professor, was sitting watching. He had never heard about fire walking. He watched and felt so much trust that he got up and started walking on fire. He was not a Buddhist, not a religious. He didn't know anything. He just watched so many people walking and he felt the feeling came from such a depth that the trust became so strong that he got up in deep ecstasy and began dancing on the coals. The monks were shocked because they had the idea that the Buddha was protecting them. This man was no Buddhist. He was an English and he wasn't even religious. He didn't go to church so Jesus wouldn't bother about him. He had nothing to do with Buddha. He had no master at all, just trust. In deep trust, the trust fulfills itself. I am the doer, thus has the black serpent of ego bitten you. I am not the doer. Drink this nectar of trust and be happy. Listen to this statement. Ashtavakra says again and again, be happy. He is saying it can happen this very moment. I am the doer. This is our projection, and we create our ego in accordance with this projection. The doer means the ego. I am the doer. We create the ego out of this. So the bigger the doer, the bigger the ego. If you have never done anything special, how can you have big ego? You have built a big house. Your big ego becomes as big as your house. You have created a great empire, so the limits of your ego extend to its limit. Because of this, some mad people have set out to conquer the world. Try to conquer the world? Who has ever conquered it? People come and go. Who has been able to conquer the world? But people try to conquer it, making claims that their ego is so vast. It is bigger than the whole world. I will surround it. I will make the borders. I will define the whole universe. Alexander and the Napoleon, Tamerlane and Nadir Shah, all mad people, attempted to conquer the world. This desire to conquer the whole world is the desire of the ego. You may have seen someone when he becomes a minister or premier. Do you see his stride? Then when he is out of the office, look at him. Out of office, he get into such a bad state. The man is the same, but strength is lost. The poison of the ego which gave him that quickness, gave him that high, which brought a lightness to his step, which kept his head high and his back straight. This is all lost. What happened? A moment before he looked so powerful, the next moment he has become so feeble. Once they are out of office, politicians do not live long. They remain strong as long as they are winning election. But as soon as they are defeated, they lose strength. Psychologists say people die earlier if they retire than if they hadn't. There is a difference of 10 years, more or less. A man who would have lived to be 80, if he retires at 60, dies at 70. The single cause of early death is that he is no longer in power, no more a collector or a commissioner or a police inspector or even a constable or a school teacher. A school teacher too has his arrogance. He has a realm of his own. He holds savvy over 30 or 40 boys. He keeps them in submission. He is emperor of the classroom. It is reported that when Aurangzeb put his father in prison, his father told him, "I don't feel at home here. Can you do something for me? Send me 30 or 40 young boys so I can open a school." It is said that Aurangzeb remarked, "My father may be in jail, but the old pride of being an emperor remains. Now he will have domination over just 30-40 boys." Even the most insignificant school teacher is the king in the world of 30-40 children. The mightiest king never have so much power over their subject. When the teacher says stand up, they stand up, and when they say sit down, they sit down. All are in his hand. Just a school teacher, a collector, a deputy collector, a cabinet minister, anyone whatsoever. As soon as he retires, he becomes weak. No one to greet him on the street anymore. He doesn't seem to have any purpose anywhere. He seems to be superfluous, as if thrown out of the rubbish heap or put in the junkyard. Now he is not needed anywhere. Wherever he goes, people endure his presence, but from their expression he understands them to be saying, just move on. Why have you come here anyway? Excuse us. Now let us do our work. The same people who used to flatter him, avoid him. The people used to massage his feet have disappeared. Suddenly the balloon of his ego is shrinking, as if the balloon has burst. Air has escaped, it is punctured. He began to shrink. There doesn't seem to any reason for living. The wish to die starts coming to him. He begins to think of dying because now life has no meaning. The people die sooner after retirement because the whole strength and the juice of their life was in the area of their work. Somebody was a head clerk, so he had a 5 or 10 clerk he used to torture. It doesn't matter who you are. Even if you were just a peon, you had your pride. When you enter an office, look at the peon sitting there. He sits in the hall on his stool, but look at his arrogance. He says, stop, wait. Mullah Nasruddin was working as a policeman, and he stopped a woman for speeding. He quickly pulled out his paper and started writing. The woman said, listen, don't waste your time writing. The mayor knows me. But he went on writing. The woman said, did you hear or not? The chief minister knows me too. But he went on writing. Finally the woman, she said, can you hear or not? Even the prime minister knows me. Mullah said, stop talking nonsense. Do you know Mullah Nasruddin? The woman replied, which Mullah Nasruddin is that? What do you mean? He said, my name is Mullah Nasruddin. If I know you, then something is possible. Whoever else knows you, even if God himself knows you, this report is going to be written and you will be prosecuted. Everyone has his pride. The policeman too has his arrogance. He has his own world, his own realm. If you are caught inside it, he will harass you. The ego lives within the boundaries of what you can do. You can see that an egoistic person feels very helpless in saying yes. Examine yourself carefully. I am not giving you a yardstick with which to check others. Use it for self-analysis. To say no gives pleasure because one feels powerful in saying no. When a child asks if he can go and play outside, mother says no. There is no harm in playing outside. If the child cannot play outside, where can he play? And the mother also knows he is going to. He will raise an uproar. He too will show his strength. There will be clash of wheels and politics will be used. He will scream and shout. He will throw things. Then she will go and say, go and play outside. But when she is one saying go and play outside, it is okay. Then he goes obeying her orders. Mullah Nasruddin's son was creating an uproar and Mullah told him again and again, sit down and be quiet. Do as I say. Sit down and shut up. But the boy was not listening. What son listens? Finally, becoming angry, Mullah said, make as much mischief as you like. Now let's see if you disobey my orders. Now it is my order. Make trouble. Now let's see if you disobey my orders. No comes easily. You keep it ready on your tongue. Look carefully. 90 times out of 100, there is no need to say no. But you don't miss an opportunity to say it. When you get a chance to say no, you seize it immediately. You feel helpless when you have to say yes. You feel insignificant when you have to say yes. To say yes means you have no power. Therefore, the very egotistical becomes atheist. To be an atheist means they have said final no. They have said that even God is not. Forget about anyone else. An atheist had made the final, the ultimate denial. The theist has accepted the ultimate, and he said yes, God is. To say God is means I am not, and to say no to God means only I am. No one is above me. No one is beyond me. No one can set limit on me. Our doing gives the strength to our ego. Keep this sutra of Ashtavakra in mind. I am the doer, thus the black serpent of ego bitten you. You are uselessly disturbed and miserable. This misery is not coming from somewhere outside. We ourselves have created the unhappiness we suffer. The bigger the ego, the greater the misery. Ego is the wound, and the slightest puff of air gives pain. It is impossible to make an egoless person miserable, and it is impossible to make egoist happy. The egoist has made a decision not to be happy, because happiness comes from a mood of yes, from a mood of acceptance. Happiness comes from realizing I am nothing. I am a drop in the ocean, a drop of the ocean, and the ocean only is. What is my being? To the same extent that one's experience of non-being deepens, showers of happiness begin to flow over you. He who becomes void is filled. He who stands up proudly is made void. I am not the doer. Drink this nectar of trust and be happy. I am not the doer. Ashtavakra calls this feeling immortal nectar. I am not the doer. This is ambrosia. Such an wonderful expression where all the burden of doing is taken off. Ego is dissolved. That I am just a trustee, not a owner, just a caretaker of my loved ones, and of all responsibility I have given. All the stress disappears, making us more efficient and more peaceful. Thanks for listening, and I will see you with another amazing part of Ashtavakra Gita next week.